Hey everyone, hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, and the love and support everyone shares with me. From the heart, muchas gracias. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype the video to help the message get out a little further, a little more, right? Gracias. Well, everyone, on this one, I'm going to take you back to the end of 2002, 2003. And I'm going to speak on a young Pili that I have mentioned it a few times, but I never really touched on his story, right? And that's Chino from Eastside San Diego. You know, when he got made, it was a push for a base that the San Diego car was trying to do, or the San Diego faction, I should say, right? Which is earn more votes, more backing in their say so, have more weight in the organization, right? So it made a whole bunch of youngsters. Most of them have not ever even been busted. So of course, when they got picked up, because that's part of being a member, right? More likely you're gonna end up doing life, and every single one of them locked it up, except for Chino from East San Diego. Do excuse, I don't remember his neighborhood. Just I always knew Chino from East San Diego, right? And anyways, like I said before, he was young. He was younger than myself at the time, right? He was 20, 21, I don't know, somewhere there. And, he was the only one that had pulled the holly on the street for a peeling and was busted. But he came in under that push, right? Of youngsters. They made him, when in reality, he caught life for them. You could say he was the only one that deserved it per se, right? But anyways, like I stated in past stories, at first, as you go in B section to the right, there's four cells. I was on the bottom, first one, and Toro and Creeper were right above me. Like I said, we were band neighbors, right? And up until Spooky took off, and I would move in someone that has an issue coming, to make sure he went out, right? And the vato, he talked a good one. I thought he was gonna buck up, right? Try to give him a chance, and it backfired. But that's a different story. Anyways, that's how I would end up upstairs. They moved me upstairs. So upstairs, by this time, Chino was already there, and they have flew out Creeper and Toro, and Chino was in the first cell from Maravilla, peanut butter, right? Next to him was Chino from Azusa, Snoopy from 18, then myself, and then the Senores Chaparro and Chopper from 18. Well, anyways, as we're there is when I got sent out to the 180, right? And I guess through that time, they moved in Chino, and he moved in my cell right next to Chaparro and Chopper. So, anyways, when I came back under that BS from that yard, right? They moved Snoopy and Chino from Azusa to C section because they needed trustworthy camaradas over there in C section, right? For any camaradas that would land there or senores, whatever. So, I would end up moving there. So, Getting back to Chino, you know, he had the honor of having some good clutch on him because he was real wet behind the ears. I'll be sincere with you. But Chopper took a liking to him. Chopper is one of them peelies. Both of them were that they don't like to get involved, in other peelies' business at all. They have their own little people. They get what they get for canteen packages, whatever, and they stay out the drama per se. But he took a liking to Chino, so he was giving him clecha, right? And it was the proper clecha, to be sincere. I was just that fly in the wall, but clecha's clecha, right? And since the whole tier was sold up and the bottom tier was sold up of nothing but us, it was comfortable being on the tier, right? So, anyways, his advice, like I said before, there's good peelies, right? With good hearts. His advice was don't get him involved in the dope game with other carnales. Don't get in their business. Don't involve yourself with too many of them that you'll eventually end up getting caught in their doings. Don't politic. Find yourself two, three camaradas and just do you, you know, which is, in my books, the best you can do, right? Because jealousy and politics will catch up with all of them unless they're real good at it, right? But, anyways, as time went by, you guys know I would end up going to Corcoran. Once in Corcoran, there was a camarada from Eastside San Diego, but he was from Lemon Grove, locos. I believe so. Do excuse me on it. He was from Lemon Grove, right? And droopy, and he was representing Chino, the young homie. So he was trying to push his name out there. What I mean by that is law library, medical, trying to reach B yard, trying to get some type of puente or bridge there with another Pili, right? Which it was good, and at the same time, it's like I was always good at receiving clecha, right? Paying attention at least to what sounded good as to follow. And he was annoying chopper, right? Which was don't get involved yourself with a lot of peelies, right? Build yourself little by little. But anyways, at the same time, it was cool to see that he was there still, after all the ones that fell from his push. And anyways, I would end up hitting B yard, and you would hear more about the homie Droopy, right? Because they would eventually tap into what was a lot in Corcoran, which was glass. I mentioned it before, and he had a couple homies on a yard, right there in Donovan, that were reporting to Chino. You know, so the homie was slowly building himself up. I would end up catching my case and going to the bay. And once in the bay, I said it before. The once I started doing things on the sides, not as camarada, señor type of thing. It was just working, right? Was with the San Diego faction, you know, and eventually Chino would end up there because Tehachapi only holds you for so long before he either moves you to Corcoran or Pelican Bay, right? He would end up there, and start hearing what Chopper talked about, which was don't get yourself involved with too many peelies, don't get in the dope game too fast, and unfortunately, the ones that push for him to be made, which in reality, the main one was Weddle, right? And they were the ones pushing against him, and for no reason. The homie again, we're talking about 4 or 5 years different of time, right? Since I met him in Tehachapi to what I'm talking about in the Bay, right? But to Sherm, he was always going to be a reminder of all them he made or they made, and they all locked it up. That one push the SD card or faction did that was a no-no, was a mistake that a lot of Pilis from different areas were holding it as a against guard towards Sherm and Silent. They were the two main ones, right? So they started pushing at first for to set him down, to basically clip his wings and say, sit down, pick up more clecha, and then we'll see in the future if you're gonna get made. That same old rola that they tend to say, right? But Chino didn't allow it. By that time, he had made friendships, right? From there is where they sent choppers to the feds, where he would end up passing away a couple years ago. So even though Chopper didn't like to get involved in things, he spoke up. He felt a liking to Chino. So then it became like a push against Sherm. And at that time, it was Sherm wasn't the one, you know, especially up there in the Bay. I'm not minimizing no other Pili or nothing, just Sherm had that cockiness to himself. He felt disrespected or challenged or anything like that. Oh, he was going to push for it harder. And at the moment, there was one, two, three, four, five, six, seven Pilis from San Diego up there, you know. And little Chino, he was one of a few that had a celly, right? Which I spoken about the homie, or I don't know if I spoken about the homie Cobra from Otay. Anyways, the homie Cobra was celled up with him. A little older vato. Um, maybe I don't know why he was validated. I'll just say that. But he was validated, right? And he was looking for that 5 year inactive to get kicked out back to the lane lines, which that was gonna work against him, eventually. But they would end up getting in his head. And this is how it worked or it got tricked, right? Again, I was doing, you could say, candy delivers with San Diego faction. But anyways, Droopy would end up getting out, right, from Lemon Grove, and he was on the streets now trying to pick up Wiggle for Chino, and basically they send him to go pick up something, which was odd, that something will come from a different angle. I'll just say that, and it was it was already a setup from the gate. There was something wrong with it from the setup. The homie picked it up, he took it in. As it got delivered to another Billy's crew, that individual ended up opening it up and hey, it wasn't what it was supposed to be. So that gave them the grounds to move on Droopy, right? Because he dug into it, he clipped whatever, right? He didn't complete the mission. He got greedy, whatever you want to put it. He got into a package. That's what they pushed on him. And it fell back on Chino. Something that has or was happening a lot with Sherm. But the first time with little Chino, and it was so obvious because, like I said, they were, since he got up there, they were pushing on him. You know, he was from SD and he made, you could say, bridges with other Peelies and the LA car was the ones talking for him instead of his own little crew, right? He was made to support. But anyways, they would end up telling Cobra to go ahead and clip dude. You know, he was too wet behind the ears. It was a mistake. That's what their exact words were, a mistake that had to be removed. And the proof was in the pudding due to Droopy. He gets whacked. And shortly after he gets whacked, Cobra would end up getting whacked because he wasn't Peely material. Imagine that. You pull a mission in the cell. The next thing you know, you're going to get whacked because you moved on a member for being wet behind the ears, according to them, for stealing or having a crew that stole. All of a sudden, you're wet behind the ears. You ain't M material, but you moved on an M, so you're done as well. And that's how they buried the Pili Chino, the young Pili. I seen his walk from when he first hit the shoe to where he got removed. Homeboy was trying, and I know Ends was doing things wrong. The only thing he did wrong was basically when Sherm told him to sit down, he said no. And he had other Pilis say he don't have to sit down. Sherm found a way to clip them. And camaradas along with it. That's how politics works in the organization. And this is just an in look on how they politic on themselves. They always build this foundation that's made for boats. That's all it is. Organization boats. One wants to do something, he has enough boats to trump the rest. And Wedo Sherm was real good at politics. But anyways, this was an in look on that. For all those youngsters that haven't been there, but they had certain homies brainwash them to like, hey, that's the goal to meet, to become one of them. No, bro. You being loved by your homies in your neighborhood is the best thing you're gonna get around that world. Believe me. Going into prison is nothing but the causa, push, push, push. You're gonna meet a lot of good people along the way. But if your goal is to become one of them, and you're gonna get in the world of politics that, you know, just look, the proof is there. There's a lot of old time members that couldn't even keep up with the politics amongst themselves, got whacked and removed. So again, do your thing for your neighborhood. Maintain loyal to your homies. That's all love. That's, you know, I don't want to sound todo acá but that's beautiful. But at the end goal should always be staying true to yourself, your freedom, and to your loved ones. Gracias.